I want to share this video with you that I found on Reddit. It's titled, "Houses Swarmed After Being Listed in Raleigh for Under $300,000. This is posted on the Raleigh subreddit. It was posted on the First Time Homebuyer subreddit and a ton of other subreddits. And I want to watch this video with you and then talk a little bit more about this.
Okay, everyone. So I am here showing my client a home. And I just want you to take a look at all of the people who are lined up to see this property. So when we say that there is a housing crisis, we really mean it. It's absolutely insane. The line goes all the way in the back. It's not even 5:30 fully, and someone stopped me and they wanted to know what was going on in the neighborhood. And I just told them the truth. I said, we're having a housing crisis. And this is a home that is priced under $300,000 here in the Raleigh area. And as you can see, there are just cars upon cars upon cars. And there are a ton of people.
So this is kind of the gist of the video, but she goes on to explain. So this is a home in Raleigh that's being listed under $300,000, which is super low for the area, and cars lining up, people driving by asking what in the world is going on. And somebody linked down below the home. And so this is the home here. Nothing too out of the ordinary, right? But this is listed for $260, currently pending. Of course, like we saw all these people out here. And it's really interesting. I'd be really interested to see, if you could leave in the comments, like what's your first reaction to seeing something like this? Like what's the first thought or the emotion that comes up in seeing these types of videos or hearing these stories? Because, for the past, at this point, over a year, I think that's what a lot of people have been feeling. They've been hearing these stories and feeling like, oh my gosh, buying a home is difficult. It's overwhelming. It's frustrating. And in this video, I want you to know that I have no solution for you. Unfortunately, there is no advice that I can give. Really, what I want to do is help you understand and feel like you have permission to feel the way that you do. Because I think for a lot of people, they hear these stories and they see videos like this. We hear the stories, but the video like this is really interesting to see, because when I saw it come up on Reddit, I was like, oh my gosh, this like really kind of cements a lot of those stories of, I almost imagine myself being there and feeling like, I can't imagine if I was wanting to buy a home like this and I got beaten out on so many other offers. And then this house comes on the market and I say, great, I really want to try for this home. And then all of these other people show up, just the feeling of being defeated and frustrated. Like I was just imagining what that would be like. And I imagine you might be feeling the same way. And what I've recognized is I think a lot of videos kind of turn a little prescriptive. And they do this thing where it's like, hey, this is a bad thing that's happened, and here are the solutions. And our brains are always trying to figure out the solution. How do we rally around the solution, and then maybe I can feel a little bit better? But that just doesn't actually work like physiologically for us. And we actually end up making pretty bad decisions long term when we don't allow ourselves to actually feel the emotions that come up when things like this happen. And so I want you to know, first of all, you're not alone in how you're feeling about the housing market, whether you have started putting bids on homes, or you haven't even got it pre-approved, or you're still working on savings, or maybe you're under contract, or whatever stage you're in the process. You're not alone in how you're feeling with what's going on right now. And all of the feelings that you do have are justified. I don't want you to feel shame or guilt or anxiety around those feelings, because emotions are things that help your body do one of two things: either mobilize or immobilize. You have to excuse me a little bit. I have a little bit of a cold right now, so like I'm not 100% here cognitively. But our emotions serve a really good purpose. That's why we have them. Like they're really good at helping us either move towards an action or move away from inaction. And they teach us something about what's happening in our environment. Something isn't right. And that's why the emotions exist. And unfortunately, what we've been taught a lot is those emotions, like, we shouldn't have them, or we're weak if we have them, or they're not helpful. They don't help us make good decisions. But it's actually the opposite. When we actually allow ourselves to feel emotions and feel them fully, we actually realize, oh, that emotion wasn't as strong as I thought it was. It wasn't as big as I thought it was. It wasn't as scary. And it actually helps us make better decisions. When we allow ourselves to fully feel an emotion, that allows us to access more wise cognitive thinking. And what's frustrating is, we can't outthink the problems that are happening with housing right now, right? We could sit here and rant about this needs to happen, this needs to change, and this is the thing that's causing all the problems, and this is the thing that's the issue. And those can be good discussions, but they don't actually alleviate the feelings of pain and frustration and anxiety and loss and suffering that you're feeling. And so in the midst of the whole home buying process, we need to start exploring, how do we move ourselves into a space of feeling more calm, more confident in where we're at, and really taking a full ownership and acceptance of what the situation looks like, even if it's frustrating. And what's really hard is, like, we so want to outmaneuver what's going on and think, I need something to change so I can get a leg up. And unfortunately, a lot of situations that we run into in life are just shitty. And it's sometimes not deeper than that. Sometimes the situations that we encounter, they're just really shitty, and there's nothing that we can do about it. But we can cause even more suffering for ourselves if we don't actually process how we're feeling. If we don't respect the fact that our body is saying, hey, you know what? Like, I need you to slow down and pay attention to this. And when we can feel those emotions fully, it moves us to a more core, authentic state where we can actually make better decisions. And I'm going to introduce you to a tool that I've learned in therapy over the past couple of years that's super helpful in dealing with some of these. But yeah, I mean, maybe you won't need to go back through that video again and rewatch it and start noticing what comes up. Because I imagine for a lot of people, there's a whole range of emotions, right? In the beginning, there's probably a lot of anger. A lot of anger that comes up. And then for some people, maybe they're at the stage where they're kind of past the anger and now it's moved into sadness. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe you started with sadness and now it's developed into a full anger. Or maybe you're at the point where it's developed into apathy and cynicism. And it's way past those emotions. And that's where we create a lot of our own suffering sometimes, where things happen to us externally, but we allow them to become so deeply ingrained within us that all of a sudden it really starts affecting a lot of our life. And it goes from, this is a really bad situation that we need to navigate, to this is a bad situation and all of the other story that I'm telling myself about what that means about me and what that means about the world and what that means about other people. And that's when we start getting into the point of we become jealous of our friends because they got something that we wanted. It's when we start getting irrationally angry and bitter at people that we're in a relationship with, because we're taking out all of this unfelt anger and emotion out on somebody else. And it gets these points where if we don't actually allow ourselves to take a moment and feel them, we start making bad decisions, not just with buying a house, but with like the way that we interact with people that we care about, and the way that we're going to move through the rest of life and navigate all the other problems. We can do those in a way where we just continue to cause more harm to ourselves through the process. And so I think it's helpful to, like, when you hear about these stories or you have your own experiences of these things, is to come at it with a mindset of kind of like, yeah, of course I am frustrated about this. Of course I'm sad. Of course I'm angry. Of course I was really looking forward to being able to buy a house in this neighborhood. Of course I ran into this issue. And the mindset is not that one of, oh, everything is bad. It's that, yeah, this is like life inherently is going to have these things that are really frustrating, and that can be devastating. Like, of course, this is difficult. And that's been really a really helpful phrase for me, is whenever I run into something where this is overwhelming or frustrating, or I'm afraid of this, or I feel anxiety, it's like, oh, of course, I feel this way. This is what's happening. And using that phrase to validate how you're feeling is really helpful. It actually kind of takes off a little bit of, it adds some like levity to it, takes off some weight. Because we should like shame ourselves with these emotions, right? We see this and all of a sudden we become jealous and angry, and then it's me versus them. And then I feel bad that I'm angry at the situation, and I feel ashamed of, well, I should be able to buy this house, and if I got this job and worked harder, then I'd have more cash to be able to put in an appraisal gap, and maybe I could pay cash for that house. Or maybe if this didn't happen and that person didn't do that thing to me, then I could be in a better situation. We shame ourselves inside of this narrative instead of being able to recognize, this is the situation that happened. Of course I feel this way. And allowing ourselves to, giving ourselves the permission to do that. Because like, I think for a lot of people, like, we're not given the permission to feel that way. And we always view emotions as these are bad. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody in the comments too who is like, this is a dumb video. Emotions aren't going to do anything for you buying a house. And I didn't say that they would. Right? But what we can do, like, we can't change the situation that's happening externally. But I mean, there's a couple things that we could maybe do and tweak. But really what I want you to feel is in a broader space of calm, contentment, and joy, even when everything else that's happening around outside of you, or the situations that you're running up against, are really tough, and they're really frustrating, and they're causing a lot of issues. So I want to introduce you to this tool called the change triangle. And it really helps. It's helped me a lot in understanding kind of how emotions work. And what's really interesting too is, like, when we think of emotions, I think we can often think of like these like long periods of like sadness or anger or whatever that looks like. But like researchers have actually studied emotions, and emotions only last on average 90 seconds. Right? It seems a little counterintuitive at first, because you're like, no, I've been sad for a long time after somebody has passed away or something like that. The actual wave of an emotion on average lasts around 90 seconds, maybe up to a few minutes. But emotions don't actually last for 10 plus minutes, an hour. They don't last for days. But what ends up happening is we actually have waves of emotion that come and go. And so when you feel something like sadness and it comes in as this wave, I think before it comes, we see it and we're like, this is too big. No way, I'm not handling this. And we push it back. But when we stuff those things down, they always end up coming back. Like your body is trying to show you something about the environment that you're in. It needs you to just see it. It doesn't need you to do anything about it. It just needs you to observe what's happening. That's the whole point of the emotion, is I just need you to pay attention. I just need you to see what I'm trying to show you. I don't need you to do anything. Maybe if you do something great, but I just need you to see this when it comes up. That's the first thing that we need to do with the emotions. And so what's interesting is they come in a wave, and then if we feel them fully, it ends up passing. And then there's going to be time in between that you're going to feel better. That's like, our bodies are really good at righting themselves, where like you feel this big wave of sadness, and then at the end you feel better, right? It's like when you've had a really good cry, and afterwards you're like, I feel better. Like, yeah, that's what the emotion did. It like helped you recognize something, maybe something that you want to change, but then you feel better afterwards. That's the whole point of the emotion. And so then you might have a little bit of a period in between, and then another wave comes. And these waves are different. But, I remember when I first started going to therapy, for me, a huge wave that I always pushed down was just a feeling of like tremendous loneliness. And I always remember like getting so close to that feeling and recognizing it and immediately shoving it down and saying, there's no way we're not going to touch this. I've been trying to push away that thing for 25 years. I don't want to touch that anymore. Well, probably not 25 years. That's how old I am. So I don't know, 23 years or something. I don't want to feel that. And so what's interesting is I remember being with my therapist and us walking through kind of some more experiential emotion-based therapy, and all of a sudden getting into that phase where I felt that emotion there, and I felt safe enough to be able to feel that full emotion. And it's so strange to have that experience where it was like, that was the most profound sense of loneliness that I think I've ever felt in my life. And what's interesting is that it's there and it feels immense, but after 60 seconds to 2 minutes, it passed. Like that thing that I didn't want to feel for my entire life, like it only lasted that long. And then I felt a lot better afterwards. And then what ends up happening is there's some time in between, and then I've had other waves like that come. But what's interesting is when we deal with them early on, the new ones that come up, we're like, oh, okay, this isn't as bad. Like this, I've dealt with this. I know it's going to come and it's going to feel really strong. It's going to feel overwhelming. So I feel like I'm drowning. And then it's going to feel a lot better. And I'm going to feel more calm and more connected and more curious on the other side of it. And what happens is these waves feel huge, and then they crash over, and then they pull back. And then the next one's a little bit softer, and a little bit softer, and a little bit softer, until these waves become so insignificant that you run into situations and you say, okay, this thing happened. Let me feel what my body wants to say about this. It wants to tell me something. It has wisdom. Just as my mind wants to help me analyze things, it wants to help me understand the safety of the environment that I'm in. Let me give it the attention that it deserves and allow it to happen. And on the other side, you're going to be more wise, more curious, more calm, more connected to yourself and everyone else around you. So I want to introduce you to this tool called the Change Triangle. And I do have a link to this in the description if you want to see it. So this is the Change Triangle. Let me zoom in here a little bit. No? Why is it over here on the left? Okay, this works. So this is kind of how we explore emotions. Like this is a evidence-based way, like a clinically backed way of how to view emotions. So this is adapted from a type of therapy called AEDP, which is Accelerated Experiential Dynamic Psychotherapy. That doesn't matter too much unless you're interested in it. But emotions usually happen in this cycle. Is we have a defense. So it's anything that we do to avoid emotions. Maybe it's we're scrolling through Zillow to try to push away the fear of, maybe if I can keep searching for homes, maybe I won't feel some of the feelings of loss or of fear or desperation from it. Or sometimes it can just be, more of the common ones. It's drinking. It could be any sort of like addiction, anything that we do to avoid emotion. But what ends up happening is somewhere along the way in our life, we learned that emotions were either too big or we're not allowed to feel them. And for most people, it's I was taught I wasn't allowed to feel emotions, which is such a strange concept because we teach other people that everything below their head doesn't matter. Like you are more body than you are head, than you are mind. And like there is all sorts of wisdom that comes through the sensations that we feel inside of our body and being able to recognize those. So it's interesting that we do this culturally, but somewhere along the way, we learned that emotions were dangerous either because we weren't allowed to feel them. We wouldn't be accepted by our parents or people that we love if we felt and showed and expressed emotions, or we learned somewhere along the way that these emotions were too big to deal with on their own because we didn't have the tools to actually explore them. And so what ends up happening is our body actually has a survival mechanism of saying, well, if the fear is too big, then instead of the fear, I'm going to allow you to feel anxiety, shame, or guilt. And these are inhibitory emotions that are maybe if the core emotion is too big or I'm not allowed to show it, I can at least show anxiety, shame, and guilt, right? And so what you can do with this change triangle is use it as a map for your own emotions to help you navigate how to get down into your core emotions. So maybe you're recognizing, well, right now I don't feel anything. I just feel numb. And what's funny is a defense is also going in YouTube comments and saying, this is stupid, this is dumb. So it's going to be really interesting to see if people didn't make it this far in the video and we can see a little bit of where they're at in the change triangle. Maybe you're here, or maybe you're at the point where I'm feeling really a lot of shame around my financial situation. Because if I had this, then I could buy this house, then I could get approved, then I wouldn't run into this issue, then I could fill in the blank. Maybe it's also coupled with a lot of anxiety, because for a lot of people, buying a home is something that's necessary. Maybe you're in a home that is infested with mold and it's becoming a health issue. Maybe you're in a home that you can't stay in because it has stairs and it's unsafe for a child or someone that maybe an elderly parent that you're taking care of. There's a whole list of reasons why, for a lot of people, moving into another home isn't just this casual thing that they want to do. It's not just this, I want to move up to a nicer home. Sometimes there is a lot of logistical reality with it. And so maybe you're feeling the anxiety with that. Maybe there's also the guilt. I think this can come a lot for men too, especially if in that role of feeling like I have to be the provider, and I feel a lot of guilt because I should be providing these things. I was told I should be providing these things for my family. And if I don't, then what does that mean for me as a man? What does that mean for me as a provider? What does that mean for me as a fill-in, whatever that role is that you have been told you should be? And that is supposed to look in a very specific way that somebody else told you it should look like. So what we do is we move from the defense, and when we recognize we're in the defense side, for me, defense often is, well, I'm going to scroll through YouTube and TikTok and whatever, and anything to get my mind out of feeling whatever thing that feels overwhelming. We recognize that and start to see, where in me do I feel any of these inhibitory emotions? Do I feel anxiety? Do I feel shame? Do I feel guilt? Okay, if it's anxiety, that's the one that often comes up for me. Okay, let me first validate the anxiety and actually work to feeling a little less anxious. And so you can do different things like breathing techniques. You can, sometimes what really works well for me with anxiety is calling a friend. What a lot of people do is they're here and then they get into anxiety and they're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get something to drink. Or I'm going to make a cocktail or get a beer. And then they move back to defense. And we often flip back and forth between these two. We just go defense, inhibitory, defense, inhibitory, defense, inhibitory. And you can see how in here, we create a lot of suffering. We never allow ourselves to move down into a state where we feel a lot more joy. So when we recognize this, we allow ourselves to feel these things and really feel, if I feel shame or feel guilt, really allow myself to see what is this shame telling me about myself? What's the story that it's creating? What does it feel like in my body? Is it heavy? Does it weigh on my shoulders? Is it in my stomach? Do I feel it in my chest? Does it feel like electricity? Is it dull? Is it sharp? Is it strong? Is it light? What are the physical sensations that come with it, along with what is the story that's coming with it? And then we move down into core emotions. And the core emotions are fear, anger, sadness, disgust, joy, excitement, and sexual excitement. And core emotions are really when that wave comes. And that's really where we want to sit with these emotions. But often, we get into, let's say the situation with the Reddit video is that core emotion starts to bubble up and maybe it's anger. And we're angry, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to use inhibitory emotions like shame and anxiety to cover over that anger. And then what ends up happening is instead of it actually being true anger, it becomes frustration and cynicism, which are not anger. They're actually defenses. If I can be frustrated, if I can yell at people, if I can say, that's the problem, this is the problem, you're the problem. If I can say, this video is dumb, this suggestion is stupid, then I don't actually have to deal with my own anger. So when these core emotions come up, we actually need to allow them space. And sometimes all we need is 5 minutes to sit down and to actually be able to give ourselves space to feel these. And in the beginning, if you're not used to doing this is going to be kind of hard. It takes a lot of practice to get to the point where you can sit and say, I'm going to allow all of this feeling to come and wash over me, because I know at the end of this emotion, what always ends up happening is you move into this final stage, which is an open-hearted state of the authentic self. This is where you're calm, curious, connected, compassionate, confident, courageous, and clear. These are all things that I imagine everybody watching this video wants to have. Could you imagine walking through the home buying journey? Whether you're working on saving or working on credit, you just got out of a bankruptcy, you're under contract, you put in offers, or wherever you're at. If you could feel more calm, curious, connected, compassionate, confident, courageous, and clear in the midst of all of the other shit that's happening. This is a lot better place to feel. This is a lot better place to be than in the anxiety, shame, guilt, defense, and some of these more negative emotions that we don't want to experience. So I'd encourage you to watch this video again and maybe start to explore what's happening here. Use this as a map of saying, okay, did this come up? And then all of a sudden, well, maybe all of a sudden disgust came up, but then guilt showed up. Okay, if that came up, let's deal with the guilt first. We need to deal with the top-down stuff, like work inhibitory emotions down to core emotions, and then we're in the authentic self. So let's deal with the guilt first. Let's recognize it. Let's validate it. Let's talk to somebody that we care about. Let's talk to them about it and really allow ourselves to feel seen. Because I think often, especially with core emotions, but we do this with inhibitory emotions too, is we don't talk about it. You know, it's so interesting whenever I talk about anxiety with other people and they're like, I have that too. Like, yeah, yeah, we all experience these. And, you know, one of the core principles of AEDP, this type of therapy, is the practice of undoing aloneness. Because through our emotions, somewhere along the way, we've learned that they're bad and that showing emotions to other people makes them reject us. And with some people, that's true. Like, there are very unhealthy people to be around who will do that. But by separating ourselves in the pain that we're experiencing only creates more and more and more suffering. When we can undo the aloneness by becoming more familiar with ourselves, more friendly with ourselves, and experiencing these emotions as we walk through them, and sharing those with other people who are safe, who we care about, who love us, that's what allows us to work through this, to feel less alone, and to move into a more open-hearted state of the authentic self. So I have a link for this change triangle down in the description if you want to use it. For me, it's been just like immensely helpful. I know this has been different. This has been a different video. Again, I told you this wasn't going to be prescriptive about. I wasn't going to tell you, here's 13 things you need to do to make your offer stand out in Raleigh. That'd be a little disingenuous. But I really encourage you to allow yourself the permission to feel these things and to talk with people you care about with them, because I want you to move into that more authentic self when you're up against all of the other problems. There's always going to be things in life that are not going to work in your favor, and they're going to make things complicated and really annoying, and sometimes just impossible. But it's so much easier to navigate those when we feel connected to other people and we feel connected to ourselves.